It's one, it's one of the most famous mysteries in all of history. A brilliant civilization, astronomers, mathematicians, builders of towering stone pyramids, that suddenly, inexplicably vanished. The Maya. Gone, the textbooks say, swallowed by the jungle over 1,000 years ago. For generations, people have blamed everything from curses to aliens to divine punishment. There's just one problem with the great mystery of the vanished Maya. Around 6 million Maya people are alive today, speaking Mayan languages, living across Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize right now. So which is it? Did the Maya vanish, or have they been here the entire time? Because DNA has finally answered that question, and the answer doesn't just solve the mystery. It reveals that the mystery was never real to begin with, a lie about what disappeared, what actually happened to those cities, and why the world was told an entire people had vanished when they never actually did. This is the story the history books got completely backwards. Here's the version everyone knows. More than 1,000 years ago, the great classic Maya cities of the southern lowlands, Tikal, Copan, Palenque, were abandoned. Their plazas emptied. Their temples fell silent. The rainforest crept back over some of the most magnificent architecture the ancient world ever produced. Archaeologists called it the Maya collapse, and for a century it became shorthand for one of history's greatest vanishing acts. But that story hides something it can't explain. The Maya didn't vanish. Their descendants number in the millions. So here's the real question this video is about. If the Maya are still here, still speaking their languages, still farming the same land, then what actually happened to those cities? And why were we so eager to call it a disappearance? Hold on to that. Because the very same evidence that proves the Maya survived also reveals what really emptied those cities, and it turns out there was no mystery at all. We'll come back to it, and when we do, it changes the whole story. But first, forget the idea of a primitive people lost to time. That's the first lie to go. The Maya were one of the most advanced civilizations on Earth. They built a fully developed writing system, the only one in the ancient Americas that could record their language completely. They were master astronomers who tracked the movements of Venus and predicted eclipses with staggering accuracy. Their mathematicians independently invented the concept of zero, centuries before it reached Europe. And their cities, at their height, held populations rivaling anything in the medieval world. This was not a people waiting to be discovered. So how does a civilization like that simply disappear? It didn't. And this is where the science delivers the truth the mystery buried. For decades, no one could explain why the classic cities fell. Then researchers turned to the environment itself, reading the record locked inside cave formations and lake sediments across the Maya world. And the layers told a clear story. Beginning around 1,200 years ago, the region was struck by a series of catastrophic droughts, decades-long dry spells, some of the worst in thousands of years. For cities that depended on stored rainwater and intensive farming to feed enormous populations, that was a death sentence for the cities. Combined with warfare and strain, the great southern capitals became impossible to sustain. So the people did the only rational thing. They left. And here is the part that changes everything. Abandoning a city is not the same as dying. The Maya didn't disappear into the ground. They moved north, to cities like Chichén Itzá that flourished for centuries afterward. Outward, into smaller communities. They adapted, exactly as people have always done when the land can no longer hold them. The collapse the textbooks describe was a collapse of stone and politics, never of the people themselves. And now the DNA proves it beyond any doubt. In 2024, scientists sequenced the ancient genomes of Maya individuals from Chichén Itzá, people who lived roughly 1,000 years ago. When they compared that ancient DNA to the Maya living in the same region of the Yucatán today, they found a direct, unbroken genetic line. The people of Chichén Itzá never vanished. Their descendants are farming the same land right now. The study even found genetic traces of the later colonial epidemics written into the survivors' immune systems, proof that the Maya endured not one catastrophe, but several, and came through every one. If uncovering the truths that history tried to bury is what you're here for, take 1 second and subscribe. That's the entire reason this channel exists. Because now the two halves of this story lock together. Here's what everyone misses. The drought that ended the Maya is the very reason their bloodline is unbroken today. A people who die out leave no descendants. A people who adapt and move, who abandon a city to save themselves, carry everything forward. Their genes, their languages, their children. The Maya survived precisely because they did not cling to the dying cities. The same flexibility that emptied Tikal is what filled the Yucatán, and Guatemala, and Chiapas, with their descendants. The collapse wasn't the end of the Maya. It was the reason they're still here. Which reframes the whole mystery. The ruins in the jungle were never evidence that a people had died. They were evidence that a people had moved. But abandoned pyramids make for a far more romantic story than a living civilization that simply relocated, and so for 100 years, the empty cities were treated as a vanishing, while the millions of Maya who descended from their builders were quietly left out of the story entirely. The irony is almost unbearable. The civilization the world calls history's great disappearing act is one of the great survival stories on the planet. There are around 6 million Maya alive today. They speak roughly 30 different Mayan languages. The faces carved into those 1,000-year-old temples are the faces you can see in the markets of Yucatán and the highlands of Guatemala right now. They didn't disappear. The world just mistook their monuments for their tombstones. And for millions of Maya, Mexican, and Guatemalan families today, a DNA test that comes back rich with indigenous ancestry isn't a shock, it's a homecoming. It's the grandmother speaking Yucatec or Kitch at the kitchen table. It's the traditions that outlived the empire. It's the recognition that the lost civilization was never lost at all. It was theirs, and it was always alive. The science simply caught up to what their blood had carried the whole time. Which leaves a question far bigger than one people. If the most famous vanished civilization in history never actually vanished, if 6 million of its descendants are alive right now, how many other peoples were declared gone by those who only ever looked at the ruins? So tell me, do you carry Maya or indigenous Central American ancestry, and did anyone ever tell you your people had disappeared? And which nation should we uncover next? Drop it in the comments. Yours might be the next video. And subscribe to find out who we dig up next. There are a lot more buried truths where this came